Okay, we are live. Welcome to Tamarah's Closet today. I have a really special guest with me here, and I've been wanting to do this for quite a while, and I didn't know that actually it would take me falling down and busting my face on the sidewalk to get someone from the fire department to be on my show. It is actually had just left a message with the fire department probably a week prior to me taking a bad fall when I was running. And the day that when I came home, I got like 2 calls from the fire department. So I was really, really excited that I got to talk to someone, and they said they had heard the call when I had my little accident. So it was really kind of funny. There's always some humor in my life, it seems like. So I had to mention that. So with me today, I have a really fabulous woman who is a full-time firefighter in Greensboro, North Carolina. She's been with the Greensboro Fire Department since 2013, and she considers it to be the best job in the world. So I'm excited about hearing about that. On her days off, she works part-time for a masonry company and driving a truck and operating heavy equipment. So please welcome to Tamarah's Closet, Hannah Johnson.
Very glad to be here, Tamarah.
I'm excited to have you here. I really am. And I was excited when they called and it was a woman that they referred to me. So that just made it even more fun, I think. So I want to just jump right into it because I know you got a big day planned. So I like to start a little bit with your background and your childhood. And what do you remember what you dreamed of becoming when you were a child, Hannah?
Well, I'm actually really fortunate because my dad can quite literally do anything. I know a lot of people idolize their parents and they think they're so cool. And my daddy, I grew up literally watching him just be able to do anything that he set his mind to. And he engineered some stuff and he could fabricate, and he did a lot of hard work, hard physical manual labor stuff. And so I just never really remember having a hard and fast set of rules about what I wanted to be when I grew up. The cool thing was all I have ever wanted to be was strong and capable. And when I was young, I found myself kind of wanting to like be like my dad and impress my dad and my parents and be capable. And as I got older, the definition of strong kind of transformed into being dependable and being responsible. So I find myself, feeling like that was very fortunate that I didn't have this box of, jobs or ideas that I had to be or things I had to fulfill. All I wanted to be was good at whatever I ended up doing and capable and dependable and responsible and strong. So I was very fortunate that was just kind of fluid throughout my childhood, that I just, whatever I end up doing, I just want to make my parents proud and I just want to be good at it.
Well, that's wonderful. Did your parents teach you that at all? Or that was just something that an inner feeling that you had within yourself?
Well, life, my mom was always the one that was, I'm very much like her, and she was always very verbose, and she would explain things. She was really empathetic. And my dad was like this strong, silent type, but like you always knew if he was either happy with you or disappointed in you, like you just knew. And my mom kind of explained things to me like, life changes, life is struggle, life is hard. And sometimes life takes you in a completely different direction than where you thought you would go. And my dad worked in construction and engineering for a long time. And that was a great job. It was good money, but it didn't have benefits. And when my sister was born, she had some premature, I think, health conditions when she was really, really young. She was just a baby. And health insurance was very important. They were a young couple. They had a brand new baby that was somewhat sick and that needed, medical attention. And so my dad started figuring out ways that he could get a job that had health insurance. So he actually started selling insurance. So he completely transitioned from like blue collar to white collar, and he never lost that work ethic and that idea of like putting sweat equity into things. Uh-huh. So even though when I, at a latter point in my childhood, my dad had transitioned to working at an office job and had his own company and was very successful, I still remembered during those very formative years, you know, because when you are very young, you see things that kind of shape the way you see the world. And I saw how hard my dad worked physically. And I also saw him, you know, working during the day as, you know, this white collar job, and then also doing, you know, a lot of physical labor jobs too. So it put things in a perspective for me about, you know, the you got to do what you got to do, and you got to be willing to work hard. And that was kind of the way that my dad judged people. Like, that was his rating system, you know. It was like, oh, he doesn't work hard, or she doesn't work hard, you know. And that has caused my self-perception and my self-worth to be directly correlating how hard I am physically working. Like, you know, like, I want to be worth something. I want to be good at what I'm doing. I want to put everything I have into my job and into serving others and doing a good job at whatever it is that I'm doing. So that was during the formative period of my life, that was very valuable lessons. And so my dad showed me and set the example, and my mama kind of helped tell me about it and explain why things were like they were and how things came to be.
Well, those are great values to have. You had them so young, which I think is very admirable. When you were a child, did you prefer playing outdoors, or did you ever have a fascination with the firemen or fire department, or that you remember?
Well, I grew up in a very rural community. It's actually a little place called Cedar Creek. It's on the outside. It's between Fayetteville and somewhere around like White Lake, I guess you would put that right in the middle there. And I loved where we were. I loved where I grew up. We were in the country, you know, out in the sticks. And I was very fortunate that my dad, you know, he instilled in me very early, you know, we have a respect. It's not really a fear. It is a respect for things like guns, fire, anything that if used irresponsibly could do a lot of damage. So I grew up from a very early age respecting fire and respecting firemen. And it also helped that being from a small community, we had a lot of volunteer, you know, we're out in the county, we're out in the sticks, in the country. And a lot of those firemen were our friends. They were our neighbors, you know, so they were people we went to church with. So being able to kind of see the job personified, and to also see those people in and out of uniform, and they were good people, and they were the parents of my friends, and they went to our church. So I really related fire safety and the respect of fire with also respecting the people that protected us. So it was always, it wasn't the forefront of my childhood in terms of like, oh, I think I'd like to do that one day, but it was definitely an understanding and a respect and an interest.
Right. Did you notice, like, when firemen came? I know when I was a kid, firemen would come to the school and talk to the students. And do you remember anything triggering any kind of emotion when they did that?
I do. I definitely do. So they used to bring this trailer around, and it was so cool. And I'm not 100% sure if they still do it, because it had an artificial smoke in it. So it was basically, we have a program and a reminder. It's an acronym. It's called EDITH, which is Exit Drills in the Home. And that is an easy acronym for parents and children to remember. So I don't remember that being the acronym when I was growing up, but they brought this trailer that was like a simulated home, and they filled it up with smoke. And then they let all of us as kids interact with it and crawl through it. And they went with us, and they would show us how, you know, as you get closer to the floor, your visibility is better and you can see things. It was really cool. And it was something that really stuck with me. So I came home, and my mom laughed about this years later. My mother unexpectedly died, and I miss her every day. But it was so funny because she would always kind of bring back these memories of me from childhood. And this is something that she used to talk about, because I came home and that experience had like really impacted me, because it kind of, you know, I'd never been in a house fire. I didn't know anything about smoke. I just thought firemen were cool, you know, and I knew that I should never start a fire or play with fire. So I came home, apparently, I don't remember telling them this, but I got my parents together, because one of the things that the firemen stressed was you have to have a fire plan. You have to have a plan. So if you have a fire in your house, you're going to meet outside. And what that does is it keeps family members from trying to go back inside to rescue someone that is actually already out of the home, which is a great idea. So apparently I came home and I told my parents, I was like very sternly, my mom used to call it rallying the troops. And she would say, oh gosh, she's coming to rally the troops. And I looked at my parents and I said, we have got to get it together. We've got to get and she just said I was so serious that I came home and I was like, we have got to get it together and we've got to have a fire plan because we don't have one. And if we had a fire, we would be in bad trouble. So I think I said, it's going to be bad news. So we developed, like right then, we developed this fire plan if something happens, and I was so happy. But that also makes me realize now as a firefighter that the way that we shape and impact our children and our community education, that actually works. Yeah. You've got kids that are excited and they're doing this interactive thing and they go home and they actually have a direct effect on their home life and their parents. And so things that they, normally wouldn't have caused a family discussion, suddenly kids are going home and saying, we have got to get it together. So that was a really cool experience. And it was one of those things that kind of got retold in a story format over the years about how I was like rallying the troops about getting it together.
I don't remember if my family had, I imagine we did. My father was very conscientious, like your father, about guns and fire and things. So we probably did, but it's been so long I don't remember. But that's a great story. You took it to heart for sure.
I totally did. I rallied the troops.
Yeah, that's great. Well, would you say you were a courageous child? Did your parents ever say you were, or did other people notice? Did you?
So that kind of falls into the whole, all I have ever wanted to be was strong. And my dad, and this is not good English, but my daddy ain't scared of nothing. And I mean that. And when I tell you that, you can believe it. Like my dad is just, he is an incredible man, but I remember being, sometimes like we're going back to the respect thing. I wasn't fearful, he always found a way without being super, dramatic or explaining things a lot. My mom was always the one that kind of got wordy with things. And my dad would just show me, hey, we don't have to be afraid. We're going to be respectful. We're going to treat everything with respect and educate ourselves about it, learn how to use it, whatever it is that we're doing, and from a very early age, I watched my dad, welding and fabricating and cutting down big trees. And we lived on the river and, we were always around, a large current of running water, so I vividly remember very rarely wearing shoes because we were outside all the time. We were in the country and my feet were, and so now, 35 years later, when I limp out in my driveway and step on a rock and I'm like, oh God, my feet, and I think back to when I literally, if it was summertime and we weren't in school, I did not wear shoes unless it was like Sunday because we were always outside in barefoot. And my mom would just brag on me, all the time. She would just say, gosh, she just has no fear at all. She will do she said, I don't know how many of our viewers will remember Evel Knievel.
Oh, yeah, I do.
So my mom's nickname for me was either Robinson Crusoe or Evel Knievel. So I don't know if that gives you a good perspective of my childhood, but I had a lot of broken bones and accidents, and I was Evel Knievel. And then I was building cabins and tunnels and staying out in caves under waterfalls next to the river, and I was Robinson Crusoe. So it was a very eventful and laissez-faire kind of childhood in terms of being able to stay outside and play. And, we did not have access to video games. We only had one TV, and that was family TV. That wasn't something that you did to occupy yourself. So I had a very good interactive childhood in terms of actually doing things and learning about things. And it was something that I would not trade for anything.
I know. Somebody's saying they remember. I'm getting comments here about what you were just talking about, the childhood, and I know this woman, so I know it. Because it's interesting you said that because you're younger than me, and so I know when I was a child, we stayed in our bare feet, and I could no more do that today. If I stepped on a rock, I'm like, oh,
I've gotten soft in my old age, Tamarah.
I know, me too.
Telling you.
We grew up on a road that was gravel and dirt, and we stayed
That's
in our
right.
bare feet. I couldn't do that now for anything in the world. So.
Well, and I think when you grow up, you have those thoughts, that you never thought about as a kid, and then I remember, I go home, I stay with my dad, and I walk across the same backyard. I've got the same feet. I'm just like, and then I find myself where I'm like, oh my God, I haven't had a tetanus booster, like just things that you never think about as a kid, and it's just,
I know.
that was a much simpler time, and in terms of society also, kids can't play outside, they're limited the way, not the way that we were as kids. So I feel like that's a shame that a lot of kids miss out on that these days.
I agree. And I think it made us stronger. I mean, I know.
You had to. It was either that or die. It was like the Oregon Trail.
I know. Oh, God. Well, what were some of the things that drew you into wanting to become a firefighter? What was the biggest, and what were some of the biggest inspirations that led you?
I was very fortunate. I actually had a family member at the time who was at our local department. And so even long before I realized that I actually wanted to be a firefighter, I was able to get an inside look at, because everyone sees their local fire station, but you might not have a reason to go there for it, ever. And I was fortunate enough to visit my family member at the fire station and to just see that early on, I got a very strong sense of family from the fire station. So that was really cool when you get to visit someone and see the way that the firemen live. And sorry, I don't know how that happened. See the way that the firemen live, and that's their home, for 24 hours. So you get an inside look at a sense of community and a sense of family. And then you see how, their family members miss them when they're there and they come to visit. And it's just like this welcome with open arms. And I visited him at multiple stations, and it was always like that. It was just the best, just a strong sense of family. And I met a female firefighter, one of the first ones I ever met, and she had recently had a baby, and her husband would bring the baby to the station, and it was such an eye-opening experience for me. Like I said, this is before I thought I wanted to be a firefighter. I was able to watch her interact with her child and her husband, and I thought, she is like a superwoman, and that's not something, even though I have never fit into what society would term a traditional box, I found myself kind of like my wheels were spinning, like, wow, like women do this stuff. Not just women, but, not just very young women, middle-aged women, older women, women with families, women with children, women with other jobs like that. That is really cool. And it kind of just got me. I was lucky that I had that experience early on in visiting the fire station, because this is a male dominated profession. So it was very helpful to see that and to see how comfortable it was. A very seamless, they accepted her, she accepted them, and everyone worked together. And it was a very, very effective crew that she was on. So I really loved that. And when I started thinking about becoming a firefighter, it was one of those, my family member, he just kept saying, you could run anything they've got. You can drive anything they've got. You're good with heavy equipment. You're going to be great. You're going to love it here. And between my personality and wanting to, I've always been kind of a caregiver, and I want to nurture and take care of others and serve others. And in addition to that, I wanted to have hands-on, blue collar experience and do a job that, sometimes you get dirty and sometimes you do tough stuff. And yeah, I love it. It's the perfect mix for the person that I am.
Yeah. I don't know you, but I can just tell just through this conversation and the first time I met you that it does seem very naturally suited to you.
That's a great job, Tamarah.
I can tell, I can feel your passion for sure. When you made that decision to become a firefighter, what was the process that you had to go through to get started, and training and all that?
Well, it's a very competitive process because it's a great job and it has great benefits and there's a great schedule. So it's a very sought after job, even though the pay is not. I don't know that any of us do this for the money.
Yeah.
First responders in general don't make a ton of money, but It enables you to have plenty of time with your family. You have group health benefits, you have a great schedule, and you get to do something that truly makes a difference. So all in all, it is a real winner in terms of a job opportunity. So when I applied, I knew that that it was going to be tough to get on. I do have a college education. I have a degree in communication studies, and I'm very close actually to my credits wouldn't transfer now, and I kind of lost the opportunity, but I was very close at one time to having a double degree in communication studies and psychology. I wanted to be a relational therapist, but as my mother would say, you know, life is fluid, life kind of changes and things change. And I kind of got involved more in the blue collar trades side of employment and thoroughly enjoyed myself for a lot of years. So I felt very confident. I do have a commercial driver's license. I do have experience with very heavy equipment and, you know, driving under high stress situations. And so I knew that the fire department would be a good fit for me, but I just didn't know how well received my application would be because there were so many others. So you go through a process of, it is a physical test first. And I was under a lot of stress, Tamarah, because I had never actually seen the physical test. And the physical test is something like what firefighters would do on a regular call. You know, you got to beat down a thing that simulates beating down a door, and you have to pull some hose up a tower and run up a bunch of flights of stairs, you know, and so I'm just freaking out because during that time I was actually managing inventory and working for a different car dealership, and I was very stressed out because I did not get days off, and they would have been very angry if they had known that I was trying out for the fire department when I came to do this physical. So I had requested a day off, and they grudgingly gave me a day off. But of course I couldn't tell them that I was, you know, because there was no guarantee I would get the job. So it was just this huge gamble, you know, and wasn't going to be worth it. And so I came and did the physical agility, and I'm sure that I just looked like a deer in the headlights the entire time because I had no idea what I was doing. And did relatively well. It is theoretically the day that you try out for the department. That is the easiest that test will ever be, because that test is used as a barometer throughout your career. And that first time you're just, you know, you're wearing civilian workout clothes, you know, you're hydrated, you're not getting yelled at, you're fine, you know, and the next time you run that test, you will be in all of your firefighting gear, and you will be breathing through an air mask that feels like you're like trying to breathe through a McDonald's straw. And you've got instructors, you know, it's high stress, and they're encouraging you and they're yelling at you. And so I knew that I could handle the physical part. And I made it past that and was granted an interview. And I think I specifically, because it took me several tries to get on. I went through several processes. It's very competitive. And I think I said something along the lines of like, oh, you're going to see me again. You're going to keep seeing me. And I don't know if they just felt threatened, like we can't handle her like a whole lot more. She's either going to be here or she's never going to leave us alone. But I just said, I've got to be here. I've got to do it. You know, I want to be here. And I just had, and kind of like this interview was going, like I just very candid in my job interview. And so it was just really an enjoyable process for me. It was the people, the leadership staff that was in my interview is actually still with our department. And I love to see them. And some of them still mention, they're like, man, we remember you running that physical fitness test and you were just like all over the place. And just, you know, so 8 years later, that tells me that I made an impression. So that was a very, the written test, the physical agility test, the interview, but waiting is definitely the hardest part. Wasn't that Tom Petty that said that? The waiting was the hardest part.
I think so.
So it is definitely very stressful in terms of, you know, you've put all of your eggs in this basket and you risked maybe another employment opportunity to be here. So it's all about, are you willing to sacrifice and to work for something that you want very badly? And I was, and it did pay off. I took a big gamble and it did pay off. So I'm very fortunate to be here, and I try to embody that and live that every day on the job.
Right. Well, were you all, because you're very physically fit. So were you already that way when you started trying to get into the fire department, or did that come later? Did you start?
Yes, ma'am. I have actually been an athlete since I was 11 years old. So
Okay.
I was a nationally ranked tennis player. I played very competitive tennis. And when I got through college, I started getting into the bodybuilding realm. I did that for a few years, really enjoyed that. But it was, it can be very restrictive in terms of, eating and stuff like that. And I just, I kind of gravitated away from that. It wasn't very good for me in terms of my mental health, and taking care of myself and viewing food in a positive way. And
Yeah.
so I actually was in a gym. This is years ago, like 03, 04. And just some random guy in the gym said, "Man, you're kind of strong, for a girl." And I thought, "Oh, am I?" And he said, "Yeah, that's a lot of weight that you're lifting." And he said, "You should come and you should do this powerlifting meet that we are doing." And I thought, well, I'll just me being me, I said, "Well, I'll go." So I went and I actually did really well. And I loved the people. It is a very welcoming, very inclusive community. No one is eating fish out of Tupperware trying to starve themselves like a bodybuilder. These are my people. Like, they were lifting big weight, and they were eating cake, and then they were going home and resting. And I said, "This is it. This is it for me, Tamarah." So I actually lifted on a professional level. I was a powerlifter on a professional lifting level for just over 10 years.
Wow.
And in 2015, I actually broke into the top 20 all-time strongest women, and in the 108-40-pound weight class. So it was a sense of accomplishment, and it was one of those things where I wasn't sure, at my age, I wasn't sure how much longer I could do that and test the limits of my body. And I wanted to be responsible because I have two very physical jobs. So I decided to stop doing that. And after I had been on with the fire department, because that was several years after I had been on, the Firefighter Combat Challenge, as you see it on ESPN, that kind of started calling to me, because it's very different from what I was used to. I was used to lifting heavy weights and going home and eating cake. And the Combat Challenge is very aerobic activity. It's a lot of running. It's an obstacle course. It's extremely stressful. You've got all your gear on, including air. You're breathing air. And so I found myself kind of gravitating towards that because it was just such a challenge. It was different than anything I have ever done, and was competitive with that. I was actually ranked 3rd in the world in the Firefighter Combat Challenge. I can't remember the year. It's been several years. And that is one of those things that it's just, life changes and you have to be fluid and roll with it. And I have tried my best just to stay in shape. And, muscles are certainly a polarizing topic. Yeah. Because people, they either love it or they hate it. And they're either, when they immediately see you, it's kind of usually hard to control their facial emotions, because you'll see people and they'll either go, or they'll say, oh, and so it's I've learned to live with either of those reactions. But I have learned that when I show up to someone's house at 2:30 in the morning and they're naked between the tub and the toilet fell out and they need someone to pick them up, they usually go, "She's here." You can do it. So it puts it in perspective that, most of the time when people need help, they are glad to see you no matter what you look like. So, and they're also glad that you're physically capable. So that has been a blessing in this profession. And it also has kept me from getting injured.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I would think so. Well, how is it different for women firefighters over men? Like, what can a woman expect? Say that maybe she's watching this interview and she's saying, "Well, I've thought about doing it," but what can she expect? Well, how is it different?
The good thing about emergencies, there is a good side to it. Emergencies don't necessarily have a gender expectation. I know that sounds kind of weird, but I'm going to kind of elaborate for you. When you show up, as long as you are capable to do the job, when you show up and you run into a burning building, no one is going to give you grace and say, "It's okay that you didn't save my loved one because you're just a woman." Do you see what I'm saying? Like, sometimes people can kind of have a negative stereotype and they'll talk down to you because you're a female. If you're able to do the job, emergency does not have a gender. So if you are going to take on a physically demanding position such as firefighting, all that the job asks of you is to be physically competent and capable. Now, what that actually means is that it doesn't, there's no, it's all relative. There's no hard and fast rule for you should be able to lift this many pounds. It's all about finding ways to adapt and overcome to certain situations, because a lot of times people will say, you know, oh, women can't do that, or she can't do that. And Claire Lewis Booth actually had a quote, and she said, if I fail, I must make extraordinary efforts to succeed, because if I fail, people won't say she can't do that. People will say women can't do that, because people tend to generalize. So what we have to be, especially in a profession like this, is a kind of an outlier, you know, because that's true. Every woman can't and doesn't want to do this profession. But by the same token, every man can't do this profession either. So we have to be fair, and we have to allow for the fact that people are going to have to adapt to, everyone has a niche and everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. So as a female, you have to find creative ways to adapt to certain circumstances and still get the job done. So we've got all kinds of, we have a fantastic, I cannot stress this enough, Tamarah, we have a fantastic training department with our department. And they have gone above and beyond to not only recruit capable women, but train capable women, mentor capable women. I'm on our mentorship team, and that is priceless, because I'm a member of several Facebook groups. Not every department has that support system for women, and it is something that I feel like our department really shines there. And I'm very proud to be a part of that program. So we have to encourage women to apply. We have to encourage women to push themselves. If you even think that this is something that you want to do, but you're concerned, come and try out. Come and take the physical fitness test, so that at the very least, you have an idea of what is required of you, because that test is such a good barometer for what you're going to be required to do. So, you know, we might have, you know, a petite woman, a small in stature woman, but at the same time, we have lots of small stature guys on our department that do a fantastic job. You've got to find where you fit in the grand scheme of things. And that also comes down to having a supportive crew. So we do the best that we can to educate people, and to always make sure that when someone gets put at a station right out of training, they are put with a crew that will really encourage and really kind of tease out the best aspects of that person, you know, because your firefighters that have experience on the department and have years on and have time on, they've seen a few things, and they know what you're going to need to do on the fire ground, and they know how to show you the best way to do it. And they're also willing to understand that the way that you are able to perform a task may not be the exact way that I'm able to perform it. And that needs to be fluid. It needs to be able to change. And that is just somewhere I really cannot brag on our people enough, that they have been able to recognize strengths in people and bring them out and elevate those.
It's wonderful that you have that program, and that good of a program. Because I think people getting into something like that definitely need a mentor to, I just think it would be scary to get into. I mean, I think it'd be cool. Like you said, I wouldn't, you know, but I think having a mentor and a team of people like that for support is real important and crucial, I think. But what have been some challenges with you personally being a firefighter, such as, are there any particular things that stand out, like that would, I don't know how to say this in the right, challenges, like for you being a woman, that had you been a man, maybe it wouldn't have been as challenging? Is there anything like that? Or doesn't have to be strength, but.
That's a really good question, Tamarah. I honestly, right off the top of my head, here is something that I think it comes down to. I have had people consistently, not everyone, there is not, I really try hard not to speak in absolutes, you know, like, oh, I've always this, or I've never this, because, you know, that's not real life. You know, you're going to have naysayers. You're going to have people that think you can't do it. You're going to have hateful, negative people, no matter where you go, no matter what profession you're in. And I've had a few of those. But the voices that I have chosen to listen to thus far in my career have been overwhelmingly positive and encouraging and motivating to me. And I have, in 8 years, I have never had anyone that their opinion lasted that was in a negative way. Everyone that has shaped me and molded me into the firefighter that I am today in terms of a leadership role has been absolutely exceptional. Some of them had incredible fire experience. Some of them had incredible knowledge in terms of, working with fire systems and the way that our fire suppression systems work. Some of them were just great people managers, and all of those things. That's why it's important, to have several captains and to have different experiences at different stations. And you got to learn, because some people are incredible on the fire scene, and then they're not that great of people. People. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They're not that great at communicating. They're not that great at expressing their emotions. And so you have to, depending on the situation you're in, you have to gain what you can gain and shut out the negatives. So glean all of the positive information and learn from it, and then don't pay the negative any mind, because you're always going to have a little bit of that yin and yang where there's just a tiny bit of bad stuff, but you still learn some cool stuff too. So as a female and an outlier, in this profession, I have been very fortunate. I haven't really run into just a negligible amount of voices that were naysayers in terms of women being in the fire department or women can't do what men can do. I have been with captains who pushed me. I have been with crew members who encouraged me, who believe in me, who think that I can do anything and push me to do those things, who want to train with me if they notice a shortcoming. And I am an incredibly open book, sometimes to the point of oversharing. I have always been a very candid person, and that isn't always received, very well. But I am very open about shortcomings and expressing a desire to work on them. And I try as best I can to be receptive to criticism, even when it's not necessarily constructive. I just want to be better. And I've been incredibly supported, not only by my current crew, but by some of them in the past. And each of them had their own way of recognizing, little niche strengths and helping me get better and bring those out and elevate those strengths.
Well, that's wonderful. Yeah, I'm glad that you haven't had to experience a lot of that negative. That's just great. Everybody has their strong points, and it's not always just about whether you're a man or a woman, and we all have our weaknesses and our strong points. So that's good. What would you say that do you believe is the single most important attribute one should have to even consider being a firefighter? Is there one thing that stands out, or?
This has come up time and again, and it has to do not only with first responders in general, but just people. And this is a touchy subject, and I don't want it to turn into like a firestorm of controversy, but one word just came to mind when you said that question, and it was integrity. And I know that sounds crazy.
No, it doesn't.
It's not, the job is just like any other job. There are requirements to the job. You need to do the job. But we are a very visual part of the community. We are supposed to be protecting. We are supposed to be serving. And people in that sense hold us to a higher standard. So if you're going to do this job, the media can be overwhelmingly negative. They can shine a spotlight only on the bad things. So we have to basically work, twice as hard to be half as good as anybody else, because we're in that position of trust with our community. So if you're going to want to be a firefighter, you have to be prepared. It's borderline the kind of attitude that a politician would have. If you're going to run for office, you better be prepared to be a decent person and do the best that you can to maintain integrity in all that you do, because there are, so many people that want to jump right on that headline of, Greensboro Firefighter did this or did that, and what we have to strive to be is a united front of integrity as a department, regardless of your rank, is to be a decent person, to do things with integrity and with intention, so that the public trusts us.
Right. No, that's good. That makes a lot of sense. And I know it's tough when you're in the public eye like that. It does, and you're dealing with the media. That is tough. So I think integrity is important. What would you say is your biggest attribute in being a firefighter? What would you? It's okay to brag. I mean, it's not really bragging. It's just, I already know, but I think
Tamarah, I care. I care.
That's exactly what I
care a lot.
Sorry, I had to interrupt.
I care a lot, and sometimes, and one of the ways, and I know I said that earlier, but my mother passed away very unexpectedly, and one of the things that I grew up watching her do was care, and I mean, she loved to take care of other people. And she had an extremely hard time, because here's the thing, you see people and then they go home to their families and you go home to your family, and you don't see what goes on behind closed doors. And my mom was one of those people that she would do all these things in the community, and then she would hear things, or she would sense something from talking to someone. She would come home and it would bother her. And I absorbed a lot of that energy. I have a very similar personality to hers. She never met a stranger. She would help you no matter what. And especially after I lost her, I found that as a way, it almost began to get amplified in me. Like, she was gone and it kind of transferred to me. And it is one of the ways that I honor her, and I continue to feel close to her, because literally I think about her all the time, and I still think about calling her, and she's the first person I want to tell when I'm happy or sad or mad. And, we used to speak on the phone 4 or 5 times a day, and she would come home at night and things that she saw would bother her. And she would say, I've got to help so-and-so, or tomorrow, she'd say, oh, Lamar, tomorrow I'm going to run to so-and-so, and my mom did all these things for other people. And one of that kind of transferred to me. And one of the ways that I want her to live on through me is by, doing these things that I'm compelled to do for others to make their lives better. So there's been a lot, not only on calls, but also within our department, things that kind of, just tugged on my heartstrings and made me want to help. And I now have this family of, 700 people that there's always someone to help and something to do. And it is a huge sense of fulfillment for me. And in some ways it's almost a selfish thing, because I do it because it makes me feel so good. I do it to help others, but it also is a very fulfilling feeling. It is literally a compulsion to, I can't see this thing, I can't hear about this thing and not take action on it. And that can be overwhelming at times. It can be very stressful at times, because you can't save the world, Yeah. And I told this story. We had a suicide that was a very, very emotionally hard scene for me. We had a person who had committed suicide by shotgun, and Tamarah, that it shook me to the core. And it also kind of hit home, because I've had multiple friends who have committed suicide. And I made this very impassioned Facebook video, and it got shared a bunch. And I had people far and wide that were reaching out to me, and I wanted to help. And it was almost a physical desire to help. Like, I have to do something. I have to make you feel the way that I feel. I want you to care about this, and I want you to do something. And I told this story about throwing starfish. So there's this man, and he walks out on the beach really early in the morning, and there's been this long storm overnight, and it threw waves far up on the shore, and the sun's coming up, and there's just littered thousands of starfish on the beach that are stranded, and the sun's coming up and the tide's going out, and they're all going to die. And he sees this kid way down the beach, and the kid, one by one, is picking up these starfish, and he's throwing them back in the water. Oh, this story always gets me. So he's throwing these starfish back in the water. And the guy kind of, as he gets closer, just one by one, the kid is throwing the starfish. And he says, hey, listen, kid, I see what you're doing and I think it's great, but you're not going to make a difference because there's too many. And the kid never checks up, and he grabs another starfish and he throws it in the water, and he just smiles at the guy and he said, I made a difference to that one.
Yeah.
And that, Tamarah, is how I live my life every day. I want to make a difference to that one and that one and that one and that one and that one.
Yeah.
And that is what my mother did her entire life. And I know that it can be done. And I've seen the way that it impacts people far and wide. And I want to do that.
Yes. That's amazing. I like that story.
Can I grab a tissue? I'll be.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Oh.
I'm so sorry, Tamarah.
No, don't apologize. I'm just so glad you're passionate about what you do, and that's just makes you a better person, and better at what you do. So I know I get emotional about things, so I understand for sure. But that's what I knew your answer was going to be. That you. I knew when I asked her, I said, I don't know what she's going to say, but I would say it was because she cares. So, see, I knew that right off. So, well, how important is it to stay in shape to be a firefighter? And do most firemen you work with stay in shape? Because, the reason I asked that question is because, Hollywood loves to fireman is the buff guy, and we see all the calendars with all the firemen, and so that's but there, what is the truth of that, or I guess, or
well, actually one of the captains in our training department made a very interesting observation, and it is something that I have always known to be true, and I thought it was great that he said that, because you have what you call show muscles sometimes, because you'll have people that look really in shape and they're very aesthetically pleasing, but they don't. It's kind of like one of the old bodybuilding magazines used to have a quote by Joe Weider, who was one of the big names in bodybuilding, and he said, "Nice body, but what can you do with it? Is it able to perform work? Are you able to do tasks with? Are you really strong? Are you working strong?" So there's a difference between show muscles and work strong. And sometimes you will be very surprised by the old salty dog guy that's been on for a long time, that kind of has a little pot belly, that goes in and outworks a very young person who is in
sure.
So working strong is not the same as, show muscle strong. So I think sometimes looks can be deceiving in terms of what you would say is in shape. Now, with that being said, there is also a very important delineation here between working strong when you need to work and also maintaining good cardiovascular health, because that is a huge, heart attacks are a huge killer of firefighters. So basic, kind of like maintenance on an engine or a piece of equipment, you've got to do basic maintenance. And that does, we do have people where they fall short on that. And when it's time to work, they get to work and they do it, and they do a fantastic job. But, they have a heart attack at 40 or 45 because they've got a blockage, or they don't have consistent exercise that maintains that level of cardiovascular health that we need. So we have the vast majority of intensely physically capable people in our department. But I do think that we could go much further in our pursuit of, how should I say this, developing maybe like a regiment of, recommended exercises. We have our physical fitness testing once a year, and we have our physicals and all that, but it's the work that goes on behind the scenes that needs to be done more consistently, because, of course we do have, recliner quarterbacks in the firehouse that stay in the recliner as long as you'll let them. And that is something that we could certainly do more to address.
Yes. Right. you have this constant training, and this is what I visualize in my mind. Do you have all these exercises that you do constantly that you practice, like, I don't know, carrying people out, or what is the routine?
We actually had a training drill last night, and we were simulating rescuing a downed firefighter or someone who had been involved with structural collapse, things like that. So there are definitely different avenues we could go down to simulate that kind of training. I try to include a lot of compound movements in my training so that I'm working lots of muscles at once, and always the core, because back injuries are so common among first responders because you're wearing all of that gear and an air pack, you're bending, you're lifting, especially when it's all hours of the night, when you're jumping up out of bed and you're getting on the truck and you're kind of getting sloppy with your form when you do things, you can hurt yourself badly. So being prepared, the 6 P's, proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. So that's what you've got to really remember, is that you've got to stay prepared. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, and it's always tougher to rehab an injury than it is to prevent one.
Right, for sure. Well, how much has it changed a lot over the years that you've been in, for the past 8 years or so that you've been in? Has much changed as far as procedures or?
Well, okay. So what has changed a lot, Tamarah, especially in recent years, is building construction. So what that means is we are getting more and more and more combustible materials, and very easily materials that easily ignite and then burn very quickly and fail very quickly. So, years ago, when it would have taken 15 or 20 minutes for a fire to build, because materials were solid, they weren't treated with chemicals, they didn't have the a lot of foam and stuff in them that burns very quickly and hot. Now you're looking at 2 to 4 minutes before everybody in the house better be out, and the roof may be failing within 10 to 12 minutes. So, especially there is this incentive within the home building industry to build things faster, quicker, cheaper, and lightweight trusses. I'm trying to think of, floor joists, lightweight roof trusses that fail quickly. So a lot of things in terms of building construction have changed over the last 10 years. What that has changed is the requirements for us in terms of not only response times, but putting water on a fire. So we have got to darken down a fire. We have got to minimize damage the best way we can as soon as we get on scene, to protect life and property, to keep things from getting worse very rapidly.
Wow, that's amazing. I didn't know. I would have thought it gotten better for home construction, and it seems like there should be some correspondence going on between the fire department and the home building industry, or, it's just, I guess it doesn't sound like there is. They're just
not that I'm aware of. I know that we have a lot of people that are very educated and make a lot of effort to understand building construction and why it is like it is. We do have an inspections department that makes sure that everything is up to code, but we don't really have anything to do in terms of, trying to change the codes. And I doubt very seriously that would become a thing where they make, builders use sturdier materials that burn less.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of, it's wishful thinking, but unfortunately that is a business and a profession that is driven by profit. So I doubt very seriously we're going to see changes in that. So that has forced our department to change in terms of how we respond to those fires and the time that we have to mitigate those circumstances.
Well, it makes it harder on you, and it also makes
it
more dangerous on the people you're trying to rescue. So what's been one of your personal biggest challenges for you? Like, I'm trying to think. I know when I wrote this question, because I've had a couple similar questions, but I think I was thinking from in terms like, how do you separate your emotions from doing your job, or when you go into a bad scene? Is there a particular thing that you struggle with a lot, the most, or?
I tend to internalize the emotions of others. I have always been that way. That is very difficult for me. I would honestly say that is impossible for me to completely turn that off. And I had a very wise captain who kind of took me by the shoulders one day because I was profoundly impacted by a multiple fatality that we ran on the highway. And it was one of those things that makes you just question everything, and it's like, can I do this for 30 years? Can I see these things? And this was an entire family of 7 people who were ejected, and there were children dead. I mean, it was profoundly disturbing. And the captain kind of took me by the shoulders, and we talked, and he was very good at helping me kind of decompress. And he just said, listen, you have to approach these scenes and say, I didn't cause this, and I can't immediately cure it. I can do everything I can do to make it better, but nothing that in terms of people who are already deceased, you have to realize and put things into perspective that we do everything we can to make a difference, but we didn't have anything to do with why this happened. You can't take it with you as if it is a guilt, and that empathy cannot hinder you in providing care and sizing up the entire scene, because there are times you can get distracted and get tunnel vision, and that's dangerous for everyone on scene. So it was very helpful for him to kind of just reinstate that and get my mindset right, and just say, I'm here to help any way that I can, and I'm not going to get hung up on what has already happened.
Right. Yeah. I think that would be hard for me to see the people that you are too late for or can't. I mean, I think that would be hard would be for me. So, but like one of the things, like when I started this episode, when I had the bad fall running, and the first responder was the fire department. Like that's the first people, and I was just curious why were they called? I think a woman driving on the road saw me laying there. It was a really bad fall. And she called, and that's who came first. Was the fire. And I've had other people say, "Well, why do they come for that type of thing?"
Okay, well, the simplest explanation is all of your firefighters are also EMTs. So, and many of us ride the ambulances and work with EMS also. So the benefit is basically call volume and transport time. So all of your qualified EMTs, the fire department responds. We do basic life saving. We pretty much keep things from getting worse and keep you alive and make sure that you are monitored for signs of getting worse, or declining. And we mitigate circumstances until ALS, which is advanced life saving, until the paramedics get there and then determine if you need to be transported or not. So we basically keep things from getting worse, monitor you, transport you out, get you out of there if we need to, like something like what happened to you. If we need to move you or anything like that, we've got the quote unquote manpower to mitigate the situation to the point that when the paramedics get there, all they've got to do is get you on the ambulance and take you to the hospital. Right. So we are very fortunate that we have a great relationship with EMS and also with our police department. And we all kind of work just interagency to make sure that things are seamless. We've got what's called, just continuity of care. So we start the treatment, we initiate everything except pushing drugs, and IVs like paramedics do. And we get you the way that you need to be stable for transport so that they can do a minimal assessment when they get there. And we're basically just transferring to them what we've already assessed from you so that they can promptly transport you to the hospital.
That's great. No, it was great. It was very comforting. I didn't have that on the questions that I sent you, but it just, while we were talking, I was like, well, that's a good question, because I know I've had people ask me that before. Why do they come to car wrecks and things like that or whatever? So yeah, I think it's great. It was great. So, but what was your biggest challenge during the pandemic? I don't even know.
So, okay. So, and this is just for me personally. So things were really difficult. The one whom I love more than anything in the world, my boyfriend, is also a first responder. He is highway patrol.
Wow.
And going back to what I said about, seeing one another and the family atmosphere at the firehouse, we try to always encourage, our fellow police and our EMS. Hey, if you need a drink, if you need to rest, if you need to use the bathroom, come and see us, come and visit with us in the station. We're very involved with our community, and not being able to have visitors in the station because of contamination. That I am a people person. I love to take care of people. We cook big firehouse meals. We have our brothers and sisters in law enforcement and EMS, and they regularly visit and stop and chat with us. And my boyfriend, during COVID, we couldn't have, even family couldn't visit the station. And because of our alternating schedules, he works nights and I'm gone for 24 hours at a time. We might go 3 or 4 days without seeing each other, because I work 2 jobs. And, he's sleeping during the day, and it really put a strain on, being able to spend time with one another. My crew loves him. He's very active with what we do, and always interested in hearing about our day. And he would come by and eat dinner with us. And I would actually add him into our, we all pay for meals together, and I would add him into the cost of the meal, and it would make it cheaper for the guys, and he'd get to come and visit with us, and that way I'd get to see him, just for an hour. And during COVID, that wasn't possible. So it was one of those things that really had been the highlight of my day, of all of us kind of congregating at the table and having visitors, and it just kind of, I don't want to say it sucked the life out of the station, but it just, all of that interaction from, having people come and see us, people who were coming to get gas at the gas pumps behind our station, or EMS workers that were passing through would stop and talk. And all of that was gone for a long time during the pandemic. And it was really tough.
No, I bet that was a strange year anyway, in a lot of different reasons, but I know. But I'm glad things are opening back up. And
Me too, Tamarah.
I know. I don't like isolation. Well, last year you received an award. Can you share that experience, or what the award was for?
It was one of those things that just, it really made me feel amazing. And it kind of, what it actually told me. So Serve Pro ran a community competition, and it was called Hero for Heroes. And someone nominated me, and I started getting votes. And it was one of those things that, what I want to stress is that I've been involved in a lot of community efforts over the years, and we've raised a lot of money for people combined that, assisted with family expenses and medical expenses and travel expenses and treatment expenses that weren't covered by insurance. And, life is hard, Tamarah, and life is struggle. And I can't remember who the quote was by, but I think about it a lot when things go wrong. And it says, to live is to suffer, but to survive is to find some meaning within that suffering. And I know that sounds so morbid, but it's one of those things where, especially in this line of work and seeing what we see, there is always someone who is suffering. And what that award told me is that people believe in what we're doing together, and I just want to stress, I did receive the award. I was awarded with a beautiful plaque. And what that tells me, and what I want to stress, is that nothing that I have organized or initiated over the years would have been successful at all without the combined participation of a lot of really good people. Because I wasn't the one who, I'm lucky because I don't have that kind of money. I work 2 jobs for a reason. I wasn't able to give that money to those people. I couldn't take care of them. What I did was I asked other people to help me, and they did. And every time I have ever asked my community for support or put out a social media campaign, I have received an overwhelming response from people, that some of whom I have never met in person, who have just willingly given of themselves and their time and their physical efforts to help others who they may have never met. And that, quite honestly, just reestablishes my faith in humanity as a whole. Every time it happens, I am pleasantly surprised. Every time it happens, I am just renewed with a desire to help. And having people surround me and receiving that award, to be quite honest, it may be a little bit uncomfortable, because that's, being involved in a competition for votes, that really doesn't have anything to do with why I do what I do, Tamarah. And but the fact that I was awarded, what that does is it tells me that people acknowledge that what we're doing is working, and that it means something, and that it makes people feel something. And that, to me, is an award all in itself.
Oh, exactly, for sure. Well, I think what you do is great. I mean, you and the fire department and all the first responders. And I've had, first responders come to me over the years. I don't know. I was like my mother, always getting some kind of accident.
Oh, yes. Same.
So I've always appreciated the people coming to my rescue, for sure. But well, that was a great reward. Well, you are appreciated. I know you are by me, so for sure. But what's been, would you say, the most difficult decision you've ever had to make when on site at a fire, or maybe it doesn't have to always be a fire, but something that you were?
Well, okay. Going back to, and this is something that I consider myself very fortunate, and it also goes back to our leadership element of our department. We have a fantastic vetting process during our promotional process that, we are promoting people with excellent decision-making skills and decision-making under pressure, and, management skills and delegation skills. I've been very fortunate. I am a senior firefighter. I'm on the back of the truck. I, on scene, am not the one making decisions. I can certainly provide input, but I am not responsible for making decisions. So that question in and of itself is kind of, not really applicable to me. Okay. But I am very fortunate that that I can remember there has not been a time that a captain told me to do something and I thought, not gonna do that. So I'm very fortunate to believe in my leadership and have people that I respect and that I trust, who are calling the shots when we're on scene. And I am very fortunate in that aspect, because, of course, like we said, they're not everyone always has that. So in my experience, I've been fortunate. I have not been in that position where I've been, kind of torn between decisions, because usually the decisions are made for me, and then I just provide input or feedback or ask questions.
Right. Well, it's like if you went, but you go into let's say you're going into a burning home. Is someone telling you who to say first, or is that just? Okay,
so so what we generally do is when we're on the truck on the way there, and everything needs to be able to kind of move around, everything has to change depending upon the circumstances. And we're just kind of batting things back and forth about what's going to happen when we get there, or who's going to do what. We generally have pretty set positions on the truck in terms of, I'm behind my captain, I'm my captain's right hand, I'm with him all the way. If the hose that needs to come off of the truck is on my side, I'm going to get off and I'm going to take that hose and I'm going to go with it. Okay. The same for the other firefighter. So your responsibility might change a little bit based on who has the nozzle of the fire hose and who's going to be first in. So, but what else was there to that question? Sorry, I got a little sidetracked.
Well, just what's the most difficult decision you ever had made? I guess I was thinking, like, when you go in, is it if you've had to say, well, I've got to pass this person and save the child first, or something like that?
Well, we are also very fortunate. We are an ISO accredited department. We are incredibly fortunate. We put a lot of people on a fire. So we've got help coming. If it's not right there with you, it's 20 seconds behind you. So by the time you've even got the hose to the door, you've got multiple crews. So-and-so, you are attacking the fire. So-and-so, you are search and rescue. So-and-so, you are ventilating and cutting a hole so that smoke and heat can come out so that the people inside can see better and there's a higher rate of survivability. So we are very fortunate that I don't see us having to make those kinds of decisions because there are more than adequate personnel to perform a good search and rescue to get people out. I don't see that being a viable circumstance for, having to prioritize one person over another. We also have specific recommendations for, in a fire, we're going to search here first and then here and then here. Things are very clearly outlined in terms of, what is most severely threatened. We're favoring life saves over property. All of those things are very well outlined in our rules and regulations. So we've got a very clear plan of attack in terms of a fire. So I'm very confident in the fact that we're not going to have to, choose who dies. So.
Okay. Well, that's great. I mean, I always wondered how that worked because I couldn't choose. I don't know. But what's would you say is the single most common cause of residential fires? Is there
Oh, girl. They start all kinds of ways.
Okay.
To be quite honest with you, probably, in my opinion, what I see, it would be carelessness. Just to be quite honest with you. And we see things that happen and you get on scene and it's one of those things where you've got a grown person in front of you and you're like, where are your parents? Or, you're just thinking, how do you make it through the day? But and you want to say those things and you can't, but you just go on scene and it's just all over but the crying then, and you've burnt the house down. But, we have a lot of people, a lot of cooking fires. Mm-hmm. We have and the majority, but that also goes back to building construction, things have evolved. And in a lot of like your apartment complexes and places like that, the structural members and some of the building materials are actually made to be more fire resistant, so that if you do have a fire, generally most of the time, unless you have an attic space or a common area that it gets into, fire will stay confined as a room and contents fire. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So generally, the fire is not going to be the whole complex, unless, like I said, fire loves void spaces and air. So if it gets into a common attic or something like that, then you've got a real problem. But generally, we run a lot of kitchen fires, some candle fires and stuff like that. But the majority of where fires start are someone who was careless with something on the stove or in the oven. We unfortunately, and this is one of those things that makes me sad and kind of stays with me, but we have a huge older population in the surrounding area of the 4 stations in my battalion and a lot of assisted living facilities. And what makes me sad is that those people are generally terrified of losing their independence and those common problems of, I forgot there was a pan on the stove, those are the ones that make me sad because we get there and the people are just, usually the most common reaction is someone who is very defensive because they don't want their independence taken away. And they're just, well, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened, and it's just a cooking fire. So, but it's normally just someone who is being careless.
Yeah. Wow. I know. Well, it's so easy to get preoccupied and, do something like that and forget. So I can imagine. But what is the typical schedule like for you? Do you have several days on, days off, or?
It is a great schedule to an extent. We work 24 on and 48 off. I worked last night. I got off at 8 o'clock this morning. What normally happens for me is I will work my 24, get off at 8 that morning. I'll clock in at my other job at 8:30 and work that day, and then work a full day the next day, and then right back on, for 24. The only downfall, because people have this idea that, oh, you've got so much time, you got so much time off. And what they don't think about is that we are very commonly the night riders over on my side of town. And, we get commercial fire alarms. We have a lot of big buildings that we're traipsing around in all hours of the night, and car accidents because we're near the highway. And if you run 2 or 3 calls after midnight and you've been up all night, you are absolutely exhausted the entire first day off that you've got, And so by the time you've gotten, that whole day, you've just been dragging, and you go to bed, and then, you've basically only got one day to really theoretically enjoy. But people do say that you kind of adapt to a lack of sleep, but we also have to remember that, in a society that kind of glorifies being overworked and exhausted, and you should just go, and that's we wear that like a badge of honor, like, oh, I'm so tired, but I persevere, and I can't remember anything, and I fall asleep at the dinner table, but I'm awesome, and that has to stop. We have to start as a society and as a profession. We have to start prioritizing self-care. We have to start setting boundaries and learning how to, prioritize our day so that we are able to spend that family time and also have time to ourselves and time to kind of decompress and relax and refresh ourselves, and rest, just truly rest, especially at the firehouse. Even when we don't get called out, a lot of us don't sleep very well there, because I think you're always kind of on high alert. You're always in the back of your mind, you don't rest well because you're afraid you might miss a call or not hear the alarm, or, you want to be ready. So you're expecting a call, even if you don't get one. So that definitely needs to be, addressed in terms of your sleeping patterns and the way that you take care of yourself any chance you get.
Right. Yeah. Well, this is something I've always wondered too. When you if you're at a scene and you're approaching someone on fire, how do you keep them calm? I mean, is it common to have people panicking? Obviously.
Oh yeah.
I would be panicking. You might not want to rescue me.
There's 2 kinds of people, actually. There's probably more than 2 kinds of people, but we had an apartment fire, and, we've got all of our stuff on, and it's like smoke just banked down, and we go in, and there's just people casually hanging out in their apartment with smoke in there, and they're just cooking and doing stuff. And I'm like, you got to get out, So there's people that you cannot stress enough that they have to be calm, and you're like, everything's okay. And it's tough, Tamarah. It's really tough to do that when you show up. The people who are the most panicked are usually the people who are already outside, because those people freaked out and ran outside. The people who you have the toughest time getting out are the people who are still inside, and they are refusing to admit that there is actually a problem.
Oh my God.
And that actually happens more than than you would think, because you're thinking, it is not safe here. You've got to get out. You can, at the very least, you can't be breathing in all of these smoke gases and this smoke, even if this fire is out, even if you can't be here. And you would be amazed at people that absolutely refuse to leave. But then, you also, like I said, you also have people that you have to attempt to kind of de-escalate. And then you also have people that really want to help. We had an apartment fire not long ago, and it was a kitchen fire. And I had a guy, I thought that it was my captain right behind me, because I had the fire extinguisher on my shoulder and tools, and I'm going in the door, and I felt someone behind me, and it was the guy from the apartment, and he had a little fire extinguisher, and he was coming with me. And I turned around and I said, "Give me that! Get outside! What is wrong with you?" He's like, "Man, and
everybody's a fireman.
I had a lot. Yeah, Jesus is a fire. So. And I thought, is he a volunteer fireman? Like, that was my first thought. I wanted to ask him, like, are you just excited? But he was all about it. And I said, no, there is a fire in your apartment. You cannot come in here. So it was actually a lot of comic relief. But we definitely have all kinds of people. But definitely it's tough to reassure someone who is panicking when you are in your full ensemble of firefighting gear, because you've got a face mask. when I get off the truck, especially if we have a confirmed fire, like I try to have everything on. I have my face, I'm not on air, but I have my face piece on. I've got my fire protective Nomex hood on. I've got my helmet, so that all I have to do is get everything done and click in my respirator, and I am ready to get in there. And it's extremely tough to reassure someone when you do not have this human element of facial expression. And that can be really tough when you've got someone who is freaking out, especially someone who is, grabbing you. And we've had people that, the last issue we had was a woman that her animal was inside, and she was, and the fire was not as bad as she had made it out to be, but she was very concerned about her animal, and she was hindering us more than she was helping us, and so I was trying to, through tone and through vocal inflection, just everything's okay. We've got you, where was the last place you saw your kitty, all that kind of stuff. And it's tough, so you have to, that goes back to the whole integrity and trust of the community. So our outreach has to be very effective with reassuring the public that when we show up, things are going to get better. And when we show up, we've got it. We don't need your help. We don't need you coming in with us with a fire extinguisher. We don't need you dragging us, behind us about your cat. So we've got this. That is definitely something that can be put out in the community as a note to self.
Yeah, right. Well, are there some things that you would like to see help improve fire prevention? And I know your Fire Prevention Week is in October, and
it is actually, I actually called our, one of the ladies that does our community outreach today. Her name is Dee, and she is wonderful. We have a fantastic fire prevention department, and they are very interactive with our community. We do a lot of, stuff with kids. We do a lot of fun days. We took our ladder trucks and did several water, like pool day kind of thing with showering the kids with the fire hose and letting them learn. And we had a fire tent set up, and it was very, very effective for our kids. But I was going to let Dee talk more about, I was a little bit late getting up with her, and I hate that, but I was going to let her talk a little more about what we do. But I do know that they do a tremendous amount of community outreach with bulletins and with, with summertime events for the kids and interaction with them. And anytime, I do want to stress this, especially to our local people, and now that COVID restrictions have eased up a little bit, anyone in Greensboro, if you would like to call your local fire station and make sure that it's appropriate and set up a time, you can bring your kids by the fire station. And we have coloring books, we've got stickers, we've got pencils and erasers. You can let them see the fire trucks and see what we do, see the station. It is a really great, really cool experience for all of your kids. So that is definitely something I would advise you to do, is call them in advance and try to set something up. You can also have the local crew respond to your kids' school or daycare once you get it approved through our department.
Okay, great. Well, you say, I just have a couple more questions. You say it's the best job in the world. So what makes it the best job in the world for you?
So being able, anytime you have a direct effect on the lives of others, that is an intense responsibility, Tamarah. And being able to positively impact the lives of others and do everything I can to help my fire family, to help my community, that to me, like, you can't find a better job than that. I show up every day, and my job description is to make things better. That's it. And protect and serve others. Like, that is tremendous responsibility and tremendous fulfillment and tremendously rewarding. So there's really nothing else to say.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. Your passion is so obvious. I mean, it's just, you can feel it. And I think it's wonderful that you found something in your life that gives you a lot of meaning, and fulfillment. Because I think that's why a lot of people are not happy in their jobs. They're doing something they don't really love.
That's true.
And so it's really wonderful that you've been blessed to find your calling. Is there a message that you would like to tell anyone who might be watching if they're thinking about this career? What would you tell them?
Well, like I said before, it is definitely one of those careers where you're going to get to do fun stuff, cool stuff, dangerous stuff, adventurous stuff. It is definitely not for people that like to play it safe.
Yeah.
It is one of those things where you have to be able to respond to anything. And some of the calls we've gotten, we're just like, how did this happen? So it is an ever-changing environment, and you never know what is going to come across that speaker. So you just have to be very prepared. But it is definitely something that I would advise you, if you are even considering, if you've ever had a thought that you think this might be something you would like to do, you are more than welcome, not only with our department, but with a lot of departments that I've heard of. You can contact them and set up an appointment to be I'm not sure if it's called Fire Explorers for grown people, but I know that's our youth program. But if you are, older than a youth and you think that you'd like to start a new career with the fire department, you can set up an appointment with them and do ride-alongs. So you can basically stay with the firefighters all day and do everything they do, learn what station life is about, learn about medical calls, learn about fire calls and response times and what they do on the scene, and just watch them in action. And I would definitely, you can go to, because you have to remember that it's not all about what we do. It's also about station life. It's about a sense of community and family. So I would recommend doing a ride along at a very busy station, and then also at a specialty station like a hazmat or an aircraft rescue or a foam station. And then also at a very slow station so that you can be around and see that community and sense of involvement, and just get a holistic view of everything that the fire department entails.
Oh, definitely. Well, those are all good suggestions. And, I love your passion for what you do. What is your favorite pastime when you're not on the job? What do you do for fun?
I love to cook. Oh, Tamarah.
Really? Okay.
I love to cook. And I actually chose to be, normally we do a cooking rotation at a firehouse. Everyone cooks, everyone has their specialties. And unfortunately, when I was not cooking, when we were doing a rotation, the guys made things like fried Spam sandwiches. And I said, no, I'm not going to eat that. I mean, I will eat that. I did eat that, and I hated it. So I really love to cook. And I'm over here making them things like seafood Alfredo, and then they feed me Spam sandwiches. And I said, no, we're not going to do this. So I elected myself to be the full-time cook, and now they just throw out recommendations, and we have things like chicken parmesan and spaghetti and seafood Alfredo and jambalaya and steak, and so wow. I enjoy cooking. It is my passion, and I grew up in a very large extended family, not an immediate. We only had 4 people in my immediate family, but it was nothing for us to get 25 people together, in our big family. And that was one of my earliest memories, was helping my mom cook for all those people. So this is definitely, that is definitely my niche, is kind of cooking and giving food to people. So it's right up my alley to do that at the fire department also.
Well, you must be a good cook then.
I enjoy it a lot.
That's wonderful. Well, Hannah, I hate to end this today, but I really want to thank you for being here with me. And happy birthday to your dad. I know
Thank you so much. He has no idea that we're coming, so this is going to be an epic surprise.
Oh, so, that's right. I hope he's not watching this.
Oh, he's not. Camera, he don't know how. Listen, things that happen on the computer, he don't even know how to turn it on. If I show him this, he'll watch it. But
okay.
But yes, but it's an elaborate surprise. So as soon as I'm done here, we're going to start traveling and get on the road.
Okay. Well, is there anything else that we didn't go over or cover you want to mention, or?
We covered a lot. I talked a lot. I'm sorry.
Okay. I enjoyed it. I really did. So I want to thank the viewers for their continued support, and make sure you share the replay of this on your social media sites so that we can celebrate our fire department and Hannah and all her hard work and her passion. Stay tuned for more talented people in Tamarah's Closet, and to your own success, keep on rocking it, and we'll see you soon. Take care.